We all remember Flapjack as that gross Cartoon Network show, the one with the disturbing close-ups and that creepy atmosphere, but almost nobody talks about the real horror of Stormalong Harbor. It's a town of rotten wood, miserable people led by a pirate who lies about adventure to a kid chasing a dream that might not even exist. Because Flapjack wasn't just weird, it was a warning about what happens when you spend your whole life chasing a candy island that isn't on the map. And once you really look at that world, it stops feeling like an adventure, then it starts feeling like a trap. The moment you really start paying attention to Stormalong Harbor, something begins to feel off. Not weird in a goofy cartoon way, wrong. Everything in this town looks like it's slowly falling apart. The docks are rotting, the buildings lean like they've been abandoned for decades. Even the ocean looks thick and dirty, like Coney Island in New York, like it hasn't moved in years. It's not the kind of place where people live because they want to. It's the kind of place people get stuck.
Well, what harbor is this?
Stormalong Harbor, sir.
At first glance, the setting just feels like it's part of the show, strange style. Cartoon Network shows around that time were experimenting with exaggerated art styles, like Chatter had food textures, Billy and Mandy had dark shadows, Ed and Eddie had sketchy animation, but Flapjack went further. It didn't just look weird, it looked unhealthy. The characters drawn with uneven proportions, their teeth are crooked, and their eyes are blurred in unsettling ways. And sometimes the show would suddenly cut to the infamous close-ups, hyper-detailed, distorted faces that look almost human. Those moments wasn't just jokes. They made the world feel uncomfortable, like something about it wasn't supposed to exist. But the deeper you look at Stormalong Harbor, the stranger the town becomes, because almost everyone living there seems miserable. The candy shop owner cheats people, the dock workers look exhausted, the townfolk wander around with blank expressions like they're waiting for something that never comes. Nobody seems excited about life in Stormalong Harbor. Nobody talks about their dreams or possibilities except one person, Flapjack. Flapjack is the only character who still believes the world is full of adventure. He believes there's treasure to find. He believes that the ocean hides incredible discoveries. And most importantly, he believes in Candy Island, the magical place Captain Knuckles promised is waiting somewhere out there in the sea. And the island is made entirely of candy, a paradise where dreams finally come true. But here's the strange thing. Nobody else in Stormalong Harbor seems to believe it exists. For Knuckles, Candy Island is the center of every story. Every adventure he tells leads there. Every dream points there. Every promise ends there. But if you listen carefully to the way he talks about it, something becomes obvious. He actually never describes how to get there. He just tells stories, big ones, wild ones, stories about storms and sea monsters and impossible voyages, stories that always end with the same promise: we're getting closer. And that's where the darker idea behind Flapjack begins to reveal itself, because Candy Island isn't just a place, it's a dream, a promise that life will eventually become something better, something sweeter, something worth the wait. But in Stormalong Harbor, nobody ever seems to reach it. They all just keep talking about it, waiting for it, chasing it relentlessly. And the person pushing that dream harder than anyone else is Captain Knuckles, the pirate who tells stories, the pirate who claims he knows the way, the pirate that Flapjack trusts more than anyone. But if you really pay attention, Knuckles' story, something starts to become clear. Because in part 2, we need to talk about the most important character in the entire show, Captain Knuckles, and why the man who promised adventure might actually be the reason nobody ever leaves Stormalong Harbor. If Stormalong Harbor feels like a place people can escape, then Captain Knuckles is the reason why they don't even try. Because Knuckles isn't just a pirate, bro is a storyteller. For instance, take season 1, episode Handed Over. Knuckles exaggerated a story.
A dark and stormy night, and I was lost at sea.
We're lost at sea? I don't believe it.
The sea of lost adventurers.
Popcorn?
A squid shark.
Every story he tells sounds exactly the same. Bro always talk about danger. He talks about adventure. He talks about how close they are to something incredible. But if you actually listen closely, none of his stories ever lead anywhere. They always end with, "We almost made it. Next time we'll get there. We're getting closer." And that's the first red flag, because real stories don't talk like that. Because people who actually seen the world don't need to keep convincing others that something amazing is just over the horizon. They just go there. But Knuckles never does. Instead, he stays in Stormalong Harbor telling stories, making promises, and keeping Flapjack believing that the next adventure will be the final one that matters. Season 1, the first episode, Knuckles hyping up Candy Island.
Friends come and go, but candy is always sweet. And besides, a real adventurer leaves his old friends behind.
So we can make new friends?
Yeah, candy friends.
And that's what makes his character so unsettling, because Knuckles doesn't just believe in Candy Island, he needs Flapjack to believe in it. Think about it. Flapjack is the only character in the entire show who still has hope. He's the only one excited about the future, the only one who genuinely believes life can become something better. And Knuckles feeds that belief constantly, not by showing him the world, but by describing it, by turning an adventure into a story instead of an experience. And the more you watch, the clearer it becomes. Knuckles isn't leading Flapjack towards something, he keeps him in the same place. Let's talk about the real role of Captain Knuckles. Knuckles represents something very specific. He represents the person who talks about change but never actually changed anything. The kind of person always has a plan, always has a story, always has an excuse, but never moves forward. And that's why Candy Island is so important, because it gives him something to point to, a goal that's always just out of reach, a dream that can be proven wrong because they never actually get there. Season 2, Candy Wife. Knuckles' obsession over candy.
A finely sculpted, tantalizing, exquisite piece.
Knuckles wants to marry Candy Wife!
That's right, boy.
Everything in his life revolves around that idea: candy, sweetness, reward. The promise that all this will eventually pay off. But look at the reality. He's broke. He lives in a filthy harbor. He survives off scraps and scams, and yet he still talks like he's one step away from something great. That's not a pirate. That's somebody stuck in a loop. So now the question becomes, does Knuckles actually know where Candy Island is? Or he's just repeating a story he's told so many times? He's starting to believe it himself, because if Candy Island isn't real, then everything changes. Flapjack isn't on an adventure. He's being led in circles, and suddenly the show stops feeling like a journey and it starts to feel like a cycle, a place where people talk about leaving but never actually leave. People dream about something better but never get there, and the only person who hasn't realized this yet is Flapjack. Because part 3, we need to talk about him, the one character who still believes everything Knuckles says, and why Flapjack isn't the hero of the story. He might actually be the most tragic character in the entire show. Flapjack is the only person in Stormalong Harbor who still believes in the dream. That's what makes him different from everyone else, but also makes him vulnerable. Season 1, so Flapjack is excited about adventure, smiling.
Oh boy,
While everyone else in the harbor looks cynical or completely checked out, Flapjack is still hopeful. He still believes adventure is real, the world is exciting, Candy Island is waiting. He hasn't been worn down yet, and that's the key, because Stormalong Harbor isn't just a place, it's what happens to people after they stop believing. Look at the adults in the show. They're not chasing their dreams anymore. They're surviving, working, scamming, waiting. They don't talk about adventure. They don't talk about leaving, because at some point they already gave up.
Like a great day for adventure.
I said,
Looks like a great day for you to shut up!
But Flapjack hasn't reached that point yet. He's still in that phase where everything feels possible. And that's why Knuckles keeps him close, because Flapjack belief gives the dream life. Season 1, Flapjack reacting excitedly to Knuckles' story. Every time Knuckles tells a story, Flapjack reacts like it's real. He doesn't question it. He doesn't doubt it. He accepts it completely. And that's where the show becomes uncomfortable, because Flapjack isn't a kid going on adventures. He's a kid learning to believe in something that might not exist. And that's the tragedy of Flapjack. The more you watch the show, the more it starts to feel like Flapjack is being shaped, not into an explorer, but into another version of Knuckles. Think about it, Knuckles probably wasn't always like this. He had to start somewhere. At some point, he probably was just like Flapjack, hopeful, excited, believe in something bigger. And over time, that belief turns into stories, and then those stories turn into habits, and those habits turn into a life where he never actually leaves. Flapjack is on the same exact path. Season 2, episode Who Let the Cats Out the Old Bag House. Flapjack is acting more like Knuckles, and he's influenced by his behavior. He copies Knuckles, he trusts him, he follows him without a question, and that's where the real fear begins in the show. Because Flapjack isn't chasing a dream, he's learning how to chase it forever. The cycle. This is where everything connects. Stormalong Harbor is full of people who once had dreams, but instead of reaching them, they got stuck chasing them. Knuckles represents what happens when you never stop chasing. The town represents what happens when you give up. And Flapjack, he represents the moment right before both outcomes. The moment where everything feels possible, but the path you're on is already set. And that's why the show feels so strange as an adult, because you start to realize Flapjack isn't going on adventures. He's slowly becoming part of the same cycle as everyone else. And the worst part, little bro doesn't even know it, because in part 4, we need to talk about the final idea the show leaves you with. Why Candy Island might not just be fake, but something much more important. By the end of Flapjack, nothing changes. The harbor is still rotting, people are still stuck, Knuckles is still sharing stories, and Flapjack, he's still chasing Candy Island. Because that's the point. This was never a story about reaching a dream. It was a story about chasing it. Candy Island isn't just a location, it's the idea, a promise. One day everything will be better. One day life will feel different. One day it will all make sense. But in Flapjack, that one day never comes. Knuckles keeps talking about it, the town keeps waiting for it, and Flapjack keeps believing in it. 3 different responses to the same thing, a dream that just stays just out of reach. The real meaning. Flapjack isn't about adventure, it's about what happens when your entire life is built around something that might not exist. Because once you really look at Stormalong Harbor, you start to see it differently. The town isn't just dirty, it's stagnant. The people aren't just weird, they're stuck. And Candy Island, it might not be the destination, it might not be the reason why nobody ever leaves. Because as long as you believe in something better is just over the horizon, you don't have to face where you are right now. And that's the trap. And that's why Flapjack hits differently as an adult. Not because it was super creepy, not because it was super gross, but because it felt familiar. Because at some point, everyone has their own version of Candy Island, and something they keep chasing, something they keep waiting for, something they believe in will eventually fix everything. But in Flapjack quietly shows you this: if you spend your whole entire life chasing it, you might never ever leave the harbor. So the real question is, are you chasing something real or just your own Candy Island?